Hey, everybody. Welcome to our final third bonus masterclass. And this is the one we get to dive in on book marketing. And I have with me today Lindsey Hartz, and she's amazing. And she's an expert in the book marketing arena. And she was the one who helped me put together my whole book launch. So mine is a little bit different than a normal book launch because not just because I'm the CEO of the company, but I was simultaneously putting together Christian Creators 360 conference with Heather Rawson from the National Association of Christian Women Entrepreneurs. So it was a lot on my plate. And I said, Lindsey, you've got to help me. So she stepped up and really, really helped me with this. And so as part of the bonus, I wanted to explore what it looks like to put a professional book launch together. Also, you have to keep in mind, I had a short runway, meaning that I didn't have that very much time to launch the book and launch the conference simultaneously. So there are things that Lindsey is going to talk about today that we did first, and some things that we're going to do later because of that later book launch. So, Lindsey, do you want to get started?
Absolutely. It's great to meet everybody. Like Sherry said, my name is Lindsey Hartz. I own Ignite Faith Media. So I work predominantly with faith-based authors on messaging and marketing for book releases and building ministries and businesses around the book messages. So I've been doing that quite a while, and I always love to hop into groups like yours and just give kind of a behind the scenes perspective on what really goes on in a book release or a book launch campaign. I know there's a lot of information that you can get online that can often feel overwhelming, especially when you're trying to figure out how to apply it to yourself and your situation. So one of the reasons Sherry and I wanted to do this particular training for you all is to just kind of give you some insights on what actually really matters when you're creating a marketing campaign and a content campaign for a book release, and also maybe just alleviate some of the pressure you might feel for performance, because honestly, we're all here to kind of extend messages of healing and hope to people. And sometimes we need to have to learn how to give ourselves grace in the process and not put ourselves under undue pressure in that respect. So I'm excited to be here, and I am going to go over a document. But Sherry, do you want me to start that now, or do you want to talk about any of the other highlights of
Well,
the?
some of the things that we talked about in the Launching You book,
Mhm.
how many of you guys have gotten through to like the last third section where it talks about marketing? Have you guys read that piece of the book yet? Go ahead and write it in the comments if you're there yet on the marketing piece at the end. Because in the Launching You, I cover some things that need to go in the book. And so,
Mhm.
Lindsey, feel free to chime in here as well. But some of the things, oh, awesome. Some of you guys have already, some are still getting there. Okay. So some of the things that you need to put in your book is one thing is book reviews. So we're adding that to all of our books now for Square Tree Publishing. At the
Mhm.
end, it'll say, hey, did you like this book? Rate it, that kind of a thing. Give us a review. The rules are that you cannot ask for a five-star review. So one of the ways that you could say it is, please give us an honest review. That's some of the lingo that you can use. So that should be at the end of your book. The other thing should be about you speaking. So if you want to start speaking, or Irene, I know you're going out to the schools, so you should say, hey, I've got this really fun school presentation that I can do to your students. And that should be like at the back of the book. And we can still add that to yours, Irene. So there's some other things that you should add to that. If you have other books that you've already done. So for example, you've already written two other books or another book, you should put other books by the author, and then it'll have like that section in there as well. And then the last one is the lead generation. So that's a whole thing that we should probably cover separately. but it's how do you garner leads? Where are you sending them? Once you bring in people that are interested in your book, where are you sending them? I want you to think of kind of like Hansel and Gretel and the little cookie crumbs. It's like, where are you leading them after you bring them in? So those things are what they call the back matter, and those should all go in the back. I like it when there's lead gens throughout the book. That makes sense. I think I did it about 3 times in the book. At the end of each section, I'm like, hey, do you want these bonus master classes? Here's the QR code. The beautiful thing is post-COVID, everybody knows a QR code. We were using them a long time ago in the books, but not everybody knew how to use them. But nowadays, everybody knows how to use the QR codes, so they're really good to use. So I would even sprinkle them inside the book if you can, if it makes sense to do that. Okay, so Lindsay,
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to pull up a document that I use for Sherry. So just to give perspective, some of this might feel a little, I don't know, more formal than you used to. But I approach this from a strategist perspective, not just a list of tasks or ideas that need to happen in a book launch. So when Sherry came to me in late November, early December, I had to go through a process of deciding what the book launch project was actually going to be about, and then what we were going to do in the time frame that we had, including reorganizing some of the information based on the short length of time we had before the release date. Because when we talked in early December, we had about a month-ish or so, including holidays, to actually figure out how to approach the launch in a clear and concise manner. So I'm going to walk you through this document. You guys will get a copy of it later. And if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. But remember, this is a combination of what we actually did for Sherry's launch and then some explanation throughout as to why we made those decisions. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm going to share this and then give me a second. Can you guys see this? Okay. Sherry, if something shows up in the chat, will you tell me? Because I can't see the chat
yeah,
for some.
I'll go ahead and bring it up.
Okay, so whenever I am starting a book marketing campaign, I always do what is called a marketing brief. It's kind of a fancy word, but really all it means is we're focusing on what's going to be the key purposes of this book launch. Like, what are we trying to accomplish, right? And so really it's just a strategy document that outlines kind of the marketing, the message, the clarity of what we're actually trying to accomplish when it comes to content marketing, and then what marketing techniques we're going to use throughout the book release.
Okay,
So like,
one thing, can you bump up the whole screen up a little bit?
what do you mean?
It's about a third of the way down on the screen. Does it open up anymore?
Yeah,
Or does it push up at all? Does it push up or no?
hold on. I'm trying. Hold on a second.
Okay.
I made it bigger, so you may not be able to. Give me a second. Is that better?
Yeah, I meant the whole, you know how it does this? Can you move the whole thing up or no? Does it not move up?
No, it's open on my window.
Okay. Okay, that's fine.
Do you guys want me to put the link in the chat and then you guys can view it yourselves on your computer?
Yeah,
Is
I
that
think that might be good just in case they want to do that.
okay? Just a second.
The link you shared was restricted, so I'm not sure if we'll be able to open it, but we'll try.
Everybody should be able to view. So if you click the link in the chat, let me know if you can view.
Does it work? Can you guys open it?
You guys open it now.
It's still circulating. Hold on.
I had to change the permissions, so let me know if you guys can open it now.
Okay, Johnny says good to go. All right, let's make it.
Okay, awesome. Sorry I can't make it bigger, but try to follow along with me while I'm chatting versus reading in advance, because then it'll make more sense. So like I said, the marketing brief is really to define goals. It kind of helps you identify your audience. A lot of us think we know who our audience is, but this is actually about marketing content, not just who you're trying to have purchase the book. We want to make sure we're outlining the messaging, kind of the communication that goes out for the book release. We want to know the marketing tactics we're going to use. And really, we're trying to stay consistent across everything that we create, right? So for this purpose, we were doing, a book launch campaign for Sherry. And I always fill out this document every time I do a book release. Again, it just centralizes information for myself and my team. And then when we move on into content creation and partnerships and outreach for people to support the book release, we have this core document so everybody's on the same page. So we have a book description. And then again, the target audience. Now, typically with a book release, as a marketer, we try to identify 3 separate target audiences. And the best way to think about this is maybe a sub audience, right? Obviously, Sherry is trying to attract writers, authors who are Christian communicators who want to write really compelling and really powerful faith-based books, right? So that's kind of a given. And that's what the first kind of target audience is when we're communicating about the book. We also know that there are a deeper subset of maybe entrepreneurs or business professionals who are faith-based, who want to use a book to establish authority and impact, not just write a meaningful, hopeful book, but they want to use it to kind of attract leads or potential clients for their business. And then we also wanted to make sure we addressed kind of the emotional side of what it's like to write, market, and share a book. So when we're creating marketing content, we actually create content that would appeal to each group in this audience. Okay, so what it does is it expands the kind of potential people that would purchase and buy the book. It also makes our marketing very concentrated and narrow to the people that Sherry actually wants to serve in her business, in her ministry, all of that. So does that make sense to everybody so far? Yeah, I'm just looking at the chat. Okay. And then one of the other things I look at is key book takeaways. Like, what is it that we're trying to have you all leave with once you read the book? And then what are like the key insights? So I won't go over all this too much because you guys have read or are reading the book. But again, any piece of content that we create, we try to point back to the takeaways and the insights because all of these are built on the audiences that we identified. And again, it gives you kind of that consistent content creation and consistent attraction of the right people for the book message. Okay. Let me know if you guys have any comments in the chat or if this is all making sense to you or if you have any clarifying questions right now. None? Okay. So that's, again, the first document. So you can see it's a pretty simple document. It's not time consuming, but again, we literally refer back to this every time we create content or create a pitch email for a podcast outreach, or we create an email to send to someone. We are constantly looking at this and making sure the content is aligning. Okay. Launch overview is a little bit longer, and this is really where we're looking at this from Sherry's positioning perspective. Okay, so we needed to understand what strengths Sherry was bringing into the launch process and what areas of opportunity. Personally, I like areas of opportunity more than language like weaknesses, right? Because we all have areas that we could strengthen or shore up, but just because we don't have a certain set of descriptors doesn't mean that we can't be successful in a book launch. So it's kind of reframing the way you think about yourself in your book message from the lack or what you think you don't have to what you actually do have, and then the areas you can just improve upon. I think that's really helpful when you're diving into a marketing and launch campaign, is to have the right mindset and the right reframe of what you're doing. You really have the opportunity to kind of plant seeds of faith and water seeds of faith with your book message. And I told Sherry and everybody else, like, God's the one that's in control of the harvest. So the way that we talk about ourselves and the book and our ability to launch the book plays just as much of an important part as what we're actually doing to promote the book itself. Okay. So from Sherry's perspective, the strengths of both her ministry, her network, her book, her relationships was the faith-focused and kingdom-focused view on serving authors. I've read a lot of books, and a lot of marketing and launch books are very business oriented or strategy oriented, and they don't always take into account what it's like to really be sharing messages that are vulnerable and faith-filled and that are pointing people to Jesus. It's not really something you usually see together, in the traditional marketing world. And so it was actually a really strong asset of the book that we wanted to make sure came across in content marketing as something that would appeal to people. I've worked with, hundreds of authors and probably taught thousands of authors, and nobody wants to be self-promotional or feel like the marketing tactics or techniques they're using are overshadowing like the purpose of the message, right? And so just be encouraged that the fact that you have the faith focus and the kingdom focus on your audience is going to shine through as long as you make sure it's there. I'm a big believer in relationship marketing, meaning I want to build relationships with the people that follow or connect with me. I don't want it to just be a transactional thing where I'm trying to sell them a book or a service or a product. And so even the way that I communicate to them in my content is going to reflect relationship versus transaction. Okay. And that's very, very easy for you all to do by remembering, again, the strengths that you're bringing to the table. So for Sherry, faith-focused and kingdom-focused view on serving authors, which is not common in the marketplace or the industry. I would also say there was a deep focus in the book on the internal work for you all as authors and creators in kingdom content sharers, but there was also the external goal, right? Of how do you get this book into the hands of readers? And usually launch books are very focused on the external. So I really appreciated that the book was talking about this internal spiritual work and practice, and then like shepherding that message into the world. So again, those were key assets we wanted to make sure reflected in all the content. And I'm assuming some of you all have read marketing books and maybe have felt, a little overwhelmed at like the to-do list that's given to you. And so one of the benefits of launching you was that it gave you a centering, grounded perspective on why we're actually doing this first before it dove into how, right? So I really believe why you're doing things can help make the how less overwhelming. If we're not grounded in that mission of our message, then it can often feel like you're just throwing, what's the phrase, throwing spaghetti at the wall, right? You're just doing whatever you can. So even I have a little sticky note on my computer that says, it's an honor and privilege to get to do what I do today. Right. And so it really is, with the highs and the lows and the disappointments and, things that don't go well and things that go amazingly well. That focus on purpose often helps keep me going too. Right. So you have to have a very grounded, rooted faith perspective on what you're doing with your book in order to navigate this process with resilience and perspective. Some more practical strengths Sherry had is a very established network of peers and partners So she had a lot of people just through her work, through her ministry, through masterminds and events that she's been a part of that I knew we could utilize in order to help share and promote the book. And then obviously she has a established and thriving business with ideal readers for the book. So again, those are all strengths. And we always do the strengths first because it's kind of reassuring, right? To go, oh, wait, I have more of the tools or the puzzle pieces that I thought I did. And all we have to do is like fill in gaps. And that's actually in my opinion, the best way to view marketing is it's almost like one of those 1,000-piece puzzles. And most writers or authors I come across actually have most of the picture filled in. It's usually just gaps in certain areas that need to have those dots connected. And I would say people are like 1,000-piece puzzle, Lindsay, that's not encouraging. However, I would say 950 of those pieces are actually relationships, right? So we'll talk about that more later, but start thinking more of the puzzle pieces being filled in with the people that you build relationships with on and offline as the core driver of marketing content and content strategy for releasing books, especially because I have an old mentor who used to say that relationships are rocket fuel. And it has proven true the entire time I've run my business. And I've been doing this for 15 years. The biggest movement and stride and support that I've experienced have been from my relationships, not necessarily a certain product or book I released. It was about me listening to the audience I had and reaching new audiences and then providing them what they were actually asking for. So, like I said, a lot of those puzzle pieces are just the relationships you have around you, and then the rest are just kind of the bridges we need to build to get them from one place to another. Does that make sense? Okay. Areas of opportunity that Sherry had was obviously the timeline. I mean, I think we had, I don't know, something like 7 weeks and like 3 of them were holidays, you know. Also just lack of time on her side for content creation due to the event production that was going on for the event they were holding. And at the time, there was no clear book funnel to attract new readers and engage existing readers. Book funnel is kind of a marketing language, but really all it is a customer journey or a reader journey, right? So we needed to make sure that we had content present online and off that she could use on her website and her social media. And also at the events and any interviews she did to draw people into the book if they were not familiar with her, or to offer the book to if they already were. Okay. So keep in mind that while we have those 3 audience types that we're trying to talk to, you always have to view the people coming your way in what we call cold, warm, or hot audiences. Did any of you, if you ever played that game where someone was like, you're hot or you're cold or you're warm, you're getting closer? I always think of that when I use this analogy. But a hot audience would be someone like Sherry technically is a hot audience. We've known each other for years. We've been in masterminds. She knows who I am. I know who she is. We have a deeper relationship. So she already knew my values. She already knew what I offered. She already knew how I serve people because of that deep relationship. A cold audience would be some of you who I've never met before. Is technically a cold audience, but because Sherry's bringing me on, you're diving into that warm, right? And so my job in this scenario is to serve you, but also to give you an idea of who I am and what I do if you want to connect with me, right? And so when we're doing marketing campaigns, you have to have a customer journey for someone who's not familiar with you at all. You have to have a customer journey for someone who's mildly familiar with you. And then the people who already know you, it's literally like, I think, Sherry, you're like, Lindsay, can you help me? Like, it literally was the question, right? Because we have that kind of relationship. So just keep in mind, again, those relationships really are rocket fuel, and you'll learn how to like progress through these in order to optimize the time and the resources you have.
Lindsay, can I jump in here real quick? Because I would love to remind them that they came in a book funnel and what that looked like.
Yes.
Would this be appropriate now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. So this is the book funnel that you guys came in on. So how many of you guys remember this? Do you guys remember this one? So this is the actual book funnel. So then we put the book at the top and then we gave bonuses, and Lindsay helped me with this to figure out like what bonuses to give. So it's just a little bit about the book and claiming your bonuses. And then down here, we go into the bonuses itself. So one of the things that I see personally, I see so many people that come to me saying, hey, I've already published a book, and I just look at their covers and they're horrible. And it's like, I can tell it's self-published within 2 seconds. And we're really big on doing really good book design covers. So that's how we came up with one of them. And then we thought this would be a good one, like behind the scenes of a launch, some of the things that we've learned for that launch. And then the last one is the marketing one that we're doing right now. So we did the master classes and then the behind the scenes of a book launch. So that's why we decided to do these, so that we could grab in the audience. Do you want to speak to this book funnel? And let me say one more thing before you do. I had one of my team members template it out. So just put in the placeholders, and it had all the ingredients that this has, but it wasn't designed yet. And I'm going to tell you, there's something that I've been learning more. Like I knew it, but like when you know something and then it just goes deeper. Design is everything. Like if you would have seen my before and this after, it was like a D to an A plus plus. You know what I mean? Like just design wise. And it just makes such a big difference in the design that you use as well. Lindsay, did you want to speak to this?
Yeah, hold on. I'm trying to pull up the original document we did. I don't think we took screenshots though. I usually do.
Oh, yeah,
Such
it
a
was,
bummer.
yeah.
Okay. So, we're going to talk about content creation in a moment. Um, hold on. I got to go back to sharing my screen. So when I say book funnel, what we're trying to do is give people, well, first we're trying to anticipate objections of why they wouldn't be interested in the book. And that kind of comes along with that content and key insights. And then we try to address it on the sales page, right? Like what about this book made it stand out and different from other resources out there? And that has a lot to do with the audience type and insights and takeaways that we identified earlier, like in the first document. The second thing, when Sherry sent me, I think you sent me a link to this page and said, this is what we've done so far. And if I remember correctly, it had the book cover, like the Amazon book description, and not much else, honestly, right? I mean, I think you had like space holder or placeholders for bonuses and stuff like that. And so Sherry's talking about the visual design being important. You'll notice there's a lot of like highlighted headlines, color blocking, imagery, and different ways to kind of separate the key things that we're trying to show people about the book. The reason we do that is because people scan pages, right? And so there's very much a reason why certain things are in bigger font or bolded, because we know people's tendency from a consumer behavior perspective to scan before they actually stop and read, right? So theoretically, when you just read anything that's in bigger font or bolded, you should get a clear message of if the book is for you or not. Of course, it's not perfect grammar, right? But just by skimming it, we're trying to highlight and help you make that decision quickly. Oh, this book is for me. I'm going to lean in, or I don't really care about this. I'm going to move on. So that might be a fun exercise for you guys to do just when you're doing market research, right? And you could start with Sherry's page, just read the headline and the bold, and you'll see where we were trying to point out those key takeaways and those key insights. This is different than just like an Amazon book page or a order my book on my website link, because it's supposed to be a standalone page to direct people to. It's not that we don't want people to go to Square Tree Publishing or to Sherry's personal website, but nobody wants to go there and then click around to try to find the information they want. And when we're doing actual book promotion, we want to send people directly to a page that's branded for the book so they can get the information they need and make the decision they want quickly. Or we want to send them to what we call a lead magnet or lead generation, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So this again is the beginning of a customer journey where we've attracted them here, and now we've moved to where we're trying to convince them they need this. And then there's what we call conversion. Again, you guys are amazing people, hear my heart, but this is the marketing part, right? It's not enough just to tell people about your stuff. You also have the strategy of attracting them, convincing, and then converting them to deeper resources, right? So that's again why we have things like bonuses, how the book will help you, what you'll take away, what you'll learn. We have a little bit of urgency in that the bonuses are available, in order to, well, actually, we didn't put a due date on yours. Never mind. Some book releases have what we call pre-order bonuses. They're only available before the release date. But that's an example of something we didn't do for two reasons. Number one, we didn't have time to do any of it before the book release. And also number two, there was a deeper desire to have long-term support. So we just did bonuses, period, that are available with the book so that no matter when someone comes across the book, they will have access to those bonuses. And that is actually something that's not as evident in the kind of traditional marketing space, especially outside of faith-based books. It's all very urgent, get this now or you're going to lose out kind of marketing language. And we don't really like to do that in faith-based marketing. We like it to be more, we're going to serve you in a deeper and more generous way. So in this case, it says exclusive order bonuses. It's not tied to the pre-order date and there's no limited availability. Does that help?
And we also had the button. So like she was saying, the hot audience versus the warm versus the cold.
Mhm.
Well, if you're a hot audience and you already know you want the book and hey, I want the bonuses, then just click here right away.
Right at the top.
Right at the top. You don't even have to read through it. But then depending on how much you need to read to jump on board is where you're going to click. So maybe you're like, okay, I'm good here. Or maybe you need to read more and then you're going to click there. So you need to make sure that there's buttons throughout that book funnel as well, because people are going to sign up at different places depending on how much information they need to make that decision.
Yeah. So when I say you have like a hot, warm, cold audience, you don't have to create necessarily marketing assets for each group. It's more just be aware that usually your hot audience will just buy the book. That's why the button's at the top. They know you, they want to support you, they're just going to buy it. They don't need to be convinced, right? When you get into that middle section, it's more towards your warm audience. This is how you're going to be served. These are the benefits you're going to experience. And then down below, it kind of moves into things that typically will have a cold audience buy, which are things like bonuses, because it becomes a value add to the book, right? And so a lot of sales pages are actually designed on buyer and consumer behavior and just kind of buyer demographics. Again, from a marketing perspective, they're designed because of what it takes to convince each person to hit buy. Right? In case you didn't know that, that's what sales pages are for. That's why they're structured that way. And that's why they all tend to look similar in the flow, meaning like what language is included in which sections. It's because they're just proven in that format to convert people based on where they're at. Now, that does not mean that every person that is a hot, warm, or cold audience is going to buy your book. And it's okay if they don't. right? Because the other purpose of the sales page or the book landing page is to help them decide if it's a resource they need now. And just because they don't need it now doesn't mean they won't ever need it. It also is no reflection on you or your work, right? So we do a lot of work on the back end with long-term marketing projects where we're tracking how many people visit, how many people click, where they click on the page, and what they do after, right? And that's actually just data, right? It's information so you can make better decisions going forward. Or even just expand an offer. It's not even about better decisions. It's more, okay, I know 100 people visited this page and only 2 people bought. Well, then that means there's something off in the language. We need to fix it, right? Because we know typical conversion rates should be at least 20%, right? So all I'm saying is when you're looking at numbers in a marketing campaign, remember that numbers are neutral and they're data. Okay, it's not a reflection of you or your work. And I think that's the biggest mindset struggle a lot of my authors have is, well, nobody's buying, nobody's clicking, nobody's whatever. And I'm like, well, where are you getting that information from? Well, my numbers. And I'm like, okay, but you also need to remember that you're making the numbers more important than the message. Okay. From a faith perspective, I always think, it's interesting because I have like both sides of me. I'm a creative writer, but I'm also a marketer. And so the creative part of me is like, well, what happened to just influencing just one person, right? We could change one person's life. And then what happens if that changes their family's life or their friends or their relationship, right? I had a book really impact me about, I don't know, 18, 20 years ago before I was a believer, literally did not go to church. And I remember reading the book going, well, this is weird. Okay. I wasn't super receptive to God at that time. Okay. And there's a lot of stuff going on in my life. But 3, 4, 5 years later, I still remembered that book. Right. And because of all the stuff that was going on in my life, I went back to it. Right. It wound up connecting me with the author of the book because I told them this book really shifted this huge struggle for me. I wound up working for them. I wound up going to writing conferences and realizing, gosh, a lot of writers hate marketing, right? At the time before my faith journey, I worked in corporate marketing. I was a marketer already, but I was also a creative writer, and I realized there was a gap there, right? So I started a business helping my friends with marketing, and 15 years later, I'm still doing it. But what am I really doing? Right? I took a message from an author's book, applied it to my life, learned who God was through that and all the books I've worked on. And it's constantly evolved and shifted my life, my faith, my family, my authors, and hundreds of millions of people who read my clients' books. Right? So don't discount what can happen with just one person reading your book. Okay? That's my little mini sermon. I'm living proof of that. Okay. The second thing is remember that, again, the numbers are neutral. They're just data to make decisions. Is that helpful? Okay. Sherry, do you want to share that or do you want me to go back to sharing it so I can talk about?
I went ahead and shared it, so it'd be bigger, I think.
Okay. Can you go to the launch overview tab
Yeah.
and then scroll down to marketing milestones? Wait, go back up. I'm sorry, I can't make it bigger for you.
There we
Okay,
go.
there you
Got
go.
it. Got it.
Okay, so again, we had the strengths, the areas of opportunity. So I knew these are the goals we needed to have for the book launch. Again, a lot of this comes with strategy and knowledge because I've done this a long time, right? But also what I want you guys to realize is these are actually pretty reasonable milestones. We're not trying to sell 10,000 books in a week, Number one, that's really wildly unrealistic unless you have a 10, 15, 20-year ministry with a team. Okay. And so what we're actually trying to do is look at marketing milestones and stages. I mentioned that I worked in corporate marketing. I was an old school marketing project manager for a Fortune 500 company. So we worked in what we call project sprints. So every 90 days, we try to accomplish a set of goals towards the bigger picture because small wins build up to big wins. Okay. And so in our landscape with Sherry, these marketing milestones are really what we're trying to achieve within about the first 6 months. These are actually two 90-day sprints. Okay. So do you see how automatically that's less overwhelming than thinking you have to sell 10,000 books in a certain time period or nobody's going to care, right? And so we knew we needed to create content, right? The sales page that Sherry showed you, we needed social media material. We needed email sequences for Sherry to communicate with the audience she has on her email list. And then we also needed kind of that lead generation aspect of how do you draw new people in to convince them to buy the book if they're not really familiar, with the book. We wanted to make sure that Sherry optimized her network. And so the goal is 50 people to share about the book on her behalf to their audience. Now, the key there is they have to be aligned. We need to make sure they have an audience that would be interested in the book. Again, that's where those 3 audience types came from, right? So anybody that she knew that had people that fit those categories are people that she could then reach out to because we already had identified that they would be a good fit for the book to be promoted to. We always try to get as many reviews as we can, love or hate Amazon, it's here, right? We have to use it because that's where people go. That's where consumers go to look for books, right? We can love independent bookstores, we can love other resources, and we can try to support them as best we can. But we have to use the resources in front of us in order to get the book into the hands of people. So Amazon is where people go for reviews, and that's where we try to get them. Okay. So again, we're trying to get, I think it's 50 is usually the first goal. And we try to do that in about 3 months of the release date. And if you haven't left a review, please go do so. I think, Sherry, you had about 13 or 14 the last time I looked. And that's fine. But we try to get concentrated reviews because if you think from buyer behavior, if you go click on 2 books about marketing and launch and one has 800, reviews and one has 12, you're automatically going to assume that the other book must not be good. Right? Is it true? Not necessarily. But again, that's the way people behave when they're looking for resources. So we try to at least hit that 50 goal first. Sherry already had an email list through Square Tree Publishing, but we also wanted to make sure that we were continuing to build that email list of the right type of subscribers and engage with them with story-driven content. Sherry, you're a great storyteller. You just have a lot of really cool things that happen in your life, and it's really cool. But
Funny.
sometimes they may not feel cool, but at the end of the day, it's just kind of fascinating. I would call you a very multi-passionate, multi-talented person in a lot of areas. And so I don't know, I think when we look at people selling or launching things, the people that make us lean in and want to know more about them are the ones with the interesting stories, right? And so again, we're a big believer in storytelling content, not just please buy my book, right? And then we talked about hosting these master classes as part of the marketing milestone and leveraging them to try to get future speaking opportunities. So Sherry, we can talk. We haven't finished this part, just so you guys know, we're still in the launch process. But part of it is taking clips or snippets out of these conversations. And of course, with permission, if anything's private or sensitive, I personally don't like share people's Zoom stuff without asking, right? Are you okay with me sharing this clip? Or it could just be Sherry's part or my part, right? So we take the content and we clip it and leverage it for social promotion, or we use it as a highlight of the type of teaching you do to try to leverage getting other speaking opportunities. So everything you do content-wise is actually designed to be repurposed, which is also another part of marketing and launching well, is understanding you're not going to have to create endless content. You're creating a core set of content that can be reused and repurposed and reshaped depending on the audience you're speaking to. And then, of
And
course,
one other thing on here, like, I don't know if you guys realized, but when you came on to Zoom, do you remember that the little thing that popped up that said that you're going to be okay if we're recording?
yeah,
So that's a way so that you don't have to go back and ask everybody, because if they see that, then they can just not put their camera on. So
that's
that's a way to do that as well.
That is very, very true. I do go, maybe it's because of the type of conversations I have with my clients. And I do a lot of like prayer and spiritual work with my clients too. So sometimes if there's something in the conversation that we're doing one-on-one or on video that I'm like, this might be a little sensitive, I actually have that same disclaimer, but I ask in those situations, right? And again, that's part of relationship building. I'm treating them as people, not as promotion opportunities for my business.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, that's fabulous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the same with us, like the second master class, when we did the prayer at the end, I stopped recording because
Mhm.
I wanted that to be private, so.
Absolutely. Again, you get to do whatever you want to do to serve the people that are connected to you. Like, again, it's an honor and privilege. Like, I don't take it for granted. And I'm not looking at every person that comes my way as an opportunity. I'm looking at them as a relationship. And that's something I'm really trying to, I guess, kind of drill into you all, is anybody that you're connected to through your work, they are a person and you can have relationship with them. Okay. Um, I feel like I'm going to go way over, but I'm trying to be faster. And then we also identified just future opportunities. This is not something we need to do now, but Sherry and I talked about how do we expand some of the Square Tree publishing services? You know, how do we potentially look at different membership models or income streams for Square Tree Publishing in order to reach more people, you know, who need the book message? And then, of course, leveraging PR is publicity, although I focus on organic publicity. That means relationship publicity, not media, which is like TV and radio shows. Okay. So organic publicity is really who do we know that has their own podcast or can do a Facebook Live, that sort of thing. It's built on relationships versus media buying, which can be very expensive and very difficult to get into at this stage. So that's not something that we were working on. If you scroll down, Sherry, the 5 Ps of a successful book launch. Sherry, you're like, we need to tell them how you made decisions. And I'm like, well, it's probably not what you're going to expect, right? This is my scorecard. This is what I use. Okay. So when I'm talking to a potential client, I actually, in my head, am asking them questions designed to figure this part out. Okay. You'll notice that none of this is sales oriented, not really. Okay. Because I work with faith-based writers, I want to make sure that prayer and really understanding God's vision and mission for them is a priority. Okay. If it's not, I usually don't work with them, or it depends. Sometimes it might be they just need some reframing, but that needs to be the priority. But if I have a client come my way that's like, I want to sell 10,000 books and make $1 million in 8 weeks, it's not that that can't be accomplished. It's that the perspective should be a little bit different for the clients that I want to work with, right? I'm interested in kingdom impact, not just money for the author. Okay. So I always think, okay, is this book rooted in faith? Is it going to transform? Is it going to be launched in faith? And I get to choose that, just like you get to choose that, right? Partnerships for Sherry were evident. She's got partnerships we could utilize. People, this is really what I define as audience. Okay, it needed to grow. So I knew that was an area of opportunity that we needed to structure the launch around in order to help Sherry with her future goals. Orange just means like green is yay, red is, oh gosh, this is something we really need to fix. And orange is kind of in the middle, right? So I knew we needed to grow it, but you already had an email list. I think you said 6,500. Is that right?
Yeah,
People.
yeah.
Okay. So you had a decent sized email list, but I knew we needed to grow it eventually in order to achieve some of the other things that you want to achieve. Promotion plan needed to be created from scratch. That's all of that content we were talking about. So that was a red because it was urgent. Okay. And proclaim. This has a lot to do with kind of the mindset and spiritual work around marketing and releasing a book. Sherry is incredible. But every creator has, fear or hesitancy or growth opportunity. Even I do. Like I'm not a perfect person, right? Nobody is. And so it was like, how do we continue to reinforce, Sherry, this is the impact your book can have in order to increase her momentum and activate her versus getting her stuck in, oh my gosh, overwhelm. Okay. So this is an internal structure that I created that I use all the time for my clients. Okay. And then I make the decisions of what we're going to do on the launch based on the red and orange because those are most urgent. So they always happen first. The reason behind that is the green is not going to be any big deal, right? I mean, I could tell Sherry, okay, email these 10 people and they would say yes, right? So we didn't need to work on building relationships. She already had them. Okay. Every launch I've ever been a part of from a publisher will say, give me a list of 100 people. I think they call it the dream something or other. Dream 100, the people that you want to reach out to share your book. And I'm like, but do you know those people? Like, do you have a relationship? Like, do they even make sense? Like the publishers, they're numbers. Okay. I'm actually, again, relationship. So my point is we didn't need to waste time doing that. Okay. So it immediately eliminated 25% of work that people think you need to do for a launch, but wasn't actually applicable in Sherry's situation. Okay. So again, this kind of helped me figure out what we were going to do. Okay. So again, we wanted strategic outreach to the people she already knew. We wanted integration of the book into kind of the overall square tree business because we want to draw people to those offers and services. I mean, it is about serving people, but it's also about using it as a cornerstone, right, for reaching people for the business. And then we want to position Sherry as a thought leader. She already is, but in our world, we have to position it, right? We have to have other people beyond her little sphere of influence understand how God has gifted her to encourage and share in this area. So we needed the book as almost like a calling card that she can leave across organizations so they can start to see her that way that she already is, that God already made her to be. And so that means we needed to focus on formalizing the book funnel. That's kind of what we talked about earlier. Book distribution and sales goals are on here. However, these goals are, I'll answer that question in a second, Vicki. These goals are for a year timeline. Okay. So we needed to kind of figure out the most important goals and get them situated. Vicki asked, I'm not understanding why there was a rush. Aren't deadlines created around the author and book? Well, from my perspective, Sherry reached out to me in late November, early December. So I wasn't in the equation until then. So that's why there was a reorganization and rush from my perspective. I had to look at everything that we needed to do and organize it in the way that made sense based on the time that I had to assist her. Sherry, you can answer that from your perspective.
Yeah, I was running an entire conference from scratch. So the Christian Creators 360 prayed about it and felt like God said, yes, do it. But we had a very short time frame to put that together. And so my time was split and divided. So that's when I thought I really need to bring Lindsey in and hire her to help me to get this going. And I will say as well, one of our goals was 200 pre-sale books from Barnes and Noble, because that's when Barnes and Noble starts looking at putting you in the bookstores. and we hit 150.
Yep.
So we were really close to that, and I know that the book sales are still going. So I have a shot at that, and that's what I was going for as well.
Yeah, Vicky, I think so ideally, in an ideal perfect world, most of my authors come to me a year before release, right? Sometimes 6 months. That's because I'm everywhere I talk about it, I'm like, you need to come to me 6 months to a year. It doesn't mean a launch is impossible if you're closer to a release date. It just means it flips where everything is being done kind of right before and after versus leading up. So, I mean, the question is, there was a short timeline on Sherry's perspective because she had other things going on in her life. And she was running and producing an event for the first time. You probably didn't realize how much support you needed until it's almost like dominoes, right? It's like one domino hit and then all the others were like taking off, right? But the key here is yes, ideally, you could even do an effective launch with 3 months. You really could. I just think 6 months to a year is more reasonable because it gives you measured time to get all this content created, the funnel up, and to constantly nurture your audience. It's just easier on your heart and your soul and your timeline and your perspective. It doesn't mean it's impossible, though. You just have to organize the components a little bit differently. And like, so we focused on content and the event launch, and now the rest of the year is literally going to be doing all the things we didn't have time to do.
And the other factor is I have a team. So I already have illustrators, I already have graphic designers. So like I could put them on the project. So it wasn't like me trying to figure this out or go find somebody.
Yeah.
I had a team in place as well. So I was able to get the book funnel up and running fairly quickly, where a lot of people, it would take a while to do that sort of thing.
Yeah. If someone came to me and didn't have a team or access to anybody like that and wanted to release a book in a month, I would strongly encourage them not to. I really would. I mean, because it's just so time consuming. I mean, I actually have a client right now where they came to me in late October. They have a whole documentary. They created this whole, they're trying to create a book to go with the documentary. And so part of my job, and even Sherry's job, I'm sure in y'all's world, is to let you know when the book is actually ready. Right. And so if the book isn't ready, like in the case of my other client right now, what we're doing instead is we're taking a core piece of it and turning it into a workbook to build the audience for that in the documentary so he can work on the book the way it needs to be worked on for the next 6 months. Right. So again, I think a lot of launch process is so communicated as everything has to happen in this certain timeline. And sure, you want deadlines and you want structured organization, but also we want the books to really serve and impact people in the way that God intends it to. So sometimes you have to have very open hands about the timeline and be very prayerful about it. You guys can read the launch timeline. All it is a description of what's typically needed in a book launch. In my world, there are 4 areas of focus for a release. That is the content creation, the book funnel, the partnership identification and outreach. Who are we going to reach out to share on your behalf? And what's going to happen for ongoing promotion beyond the release date. You guys, those are the only 4 things that are needed for book releases. I don't care what anybody else says. Like I've done this long enough to know this is actually what matters. Okay. And to be honest, if you scroll up again, Sherry, I put yours in order of what we needed to focus on. So it's content, book funnel, partnership, ongoing. If I have time, if we have time, partner identification and outreach is always first with some of the content creation. Okay. Because again, relationships are your key priority when you're marketing or launching anything. Are you taking time to build relationships with people, to serve and be generous, and not just showing up when you need something from them? Right. I don't think we do that on purpose, but I have built relationships long term with many people, peers, clients. I've had people be on my email list for 7 years before they hire me. or they never hire me, whatever, right? The point is, my mission is not about building my business. My mission is about serving. Okay. So I'm going to really, really harp on this relationship thing. These people in your room are your relationships. People who are in similar writing topics can be relationships. People that you admire their business or ministry can be relationships. And if you can learn or master the art of that networking on and offline, that is actually what's going to drive the most audience for you going forward.
Thank you so much for sharing today. I appreciate it. Did
Absolutely.
you have any last minute wrap up?
No, I just want to encourage you guys. And if you guys have any specific questions, you can let me know now, or you can email me, and then I'll figure out how to download this and send it to you guys as a PDF.
Wow, I know you guys are kind of like, okay, that was a lot. Marketing is a lot. But is there any things, I know, Irene, you've been doing this now that you've launched. So you're kind of out there now. Anybody have any questions that are percolating to the top right now?
Or any thoughts about what I shared? Were there any aha moments for you?
Yeah, that's good too.
I really liked the relationship, like just the relationship versus transaction. And just, yeah, that was just, yeah, that's the key.
Good. So my challenge to you is to figure out like 5 people that you can build relationships with that fit into your demographic. From a practical standpoint, I have a lot of stuff going on. I have a business. Okay. So like for me, I actually schedule intentional time. Every day I have a 20-minute window in the morning and right before I get off work to just connect with potential clients and peers. And I do a lot of it on social media. Okay. The clients I'm working with, I literally have it in my project plans to check in with them, not because I'm going to forget, but because I want to be organized about it. Right. I have so much to remember. I connect with people around those time periods. You know, it's not like I scroll on my phone at 11 p.m. just like everybody else. But my point is that I'm intentional about the people that are in my world that I know are considering working with me. So just schedule some time and connect with people. Anybody else?
I was going to say, yes, I love the visual of the 1,000-piece puzzle. That goes right in the line with what God's been showing me about I am going to promote you piece by piece. And so 950 pieces being the relationship part is a good visual for me. One thing I did learn, I went to She Speaks, Lisa Turkhurst. I've been to that conference twice. One of the things that I've started to be more intentional about, I've noticed some other people doing it to me, and now I'm starting to do it for others, is a voice memo from text. And I'll say, I'll just ask Holy Spirit in the morning. I'll just say, Holy Spirit, what divine appointments? Is there anyone in specific that I need to just touch base with? Just let them know I'm here, or pray for them, or ask them for, something that they need prayer for. And I've been doing this now for a while, and it's been extremely effective. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so I do believe in the intentionality of this relationship marketing. And the voice memos are so much easier for me. And there's a lot less error in the texting and then the voice talking and all of that. So just throwing that out there, that might be something good. Just, trying to do 5 voice memos a day to whoever the Holy Spirit just goes and illuminates in your mind. And it's been really, really effective.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't do voice memos because I can't ever figure out how to do it. I'm like so technically inept, it's ridiculous. But I do respond, like when people follow me or connect with me, I send them a message and I'm literally like, this is me. I'm not a bot. I'm not like some AI. This is literally me, and I will engage in conversation. And I've learned really quickly that there's a lot of skepticism, especially when people are connecting with you online. So I will tell people, I'm just curious what resonated with you with no expectations. I'm curious. Are you here for my content? Are you here because you want to work with me? Or you just like my dog? Right? No, I'm serious. And people most of the time will answer. And it's interesting because I've been on the receiving end many times of people like sending me friend requests and then immediately sending me a message that's very obviously a veiled sales technique. And I literally tell them, it's usually questions like, so what do you do? And like the snarky me is like, did you read my website? Because then you know exactly what I would do. I don't say that, but I always think it because we're all geared to like, we don't want to be sold to, right? And then I like take a step back and go, okay, what is this person trying to achieve? Like I actually do build relationships. And I have someone the other day who was trying to get me in their mastermind or something. And I wrote back and I said, hey, I really admire, the courage it took for you to message me this. I am actually not your ideal client for this. However, I actually train people on this. So you might consider doing this way. I'm saying this as a service. I want to get to know you. But looking at my website would have made it clear that I'm not actually your ideal audience. Right. And so now we talk all the time. She's not hiring me and I didn't ask her to hire me, but I'm just giving her advice. Right. So my point is you do have to understand that some people are not going to respond even to a voicemail. They're going to be like, oh, they're trying to get something out of me because some people are naturally skeptical. So it's important that you actually follow through with consistent action. That is why I have things on my calendar to check in with people or comment. I try to share all my clients' stuff, just to kind of share and promote them. I try to encourage them. And honestly, I don't even ask. Well, I'm terrible about asking for support, which is funny because I teach all my clients to do it. But if I did ask for support, I mean, I would have known you for a year or two or three before I even asked you for anything. I'm not saying I couldn't have done it sooner. I probably could have. I guess I'm not in it for that. And so I think it's more that the reputation I have is being known for connecting people. And so it's more important to me to connect people. And then if I have to ask something, I'm just very specific about it. Like I'll go through my friend list and go, who do I think might actually benefit from whatever I'm doing? And I'll email, I don't know, 15 people, and 9 times out of 10 of them will say yes because of relationships. Okay. So just kind of keep in mind, I love the voicemail thing. I just can't ever figure out how to do it. There was one question in the chat. I think Kim asked about getting emails, and I'm assuming you mean for the book release. So getting emails is like you have to give people an incentive. And again, nobody wants to be sold to in their email either, unless you want like coupons. I send it for coupons all the time because I'm cheap, right? But generally speaking, people don't want to be sold to in their inbox, right? So you have to think of it as what value can I add to this person in exchange for their email address? And then also be very clear right up front. You're going to get an email. I actually email my list like once a quarter. Like seriously, I'm like, you're barely going to hear from me because it's not in my world. I don't actually need to do it. It's a little bit different for book releases, but it's just what can I give you that's actually service oriented to you that you can take action on today and it will actually change something for you. That's how you get people to sign up for your email list. Right. So it might be a quiz that gives them a perspective on, I don't know, their communication style. And then you immediately give them, a resource on how to change that communication style. Right. It's again, email lists are just as much about serving as social media is. So think of it less of what can I get them to buy and more can I just continue to serve them. I have email sequences, which are automated emails that go out. I think they're like once a month right now. And all it is me writing a whole bunch of emails on my perspective of marketing and why it's different. Right? I'm not selling. I mean, I think I have like 2 references in the entire 18 emails that says something like, if you need support with this, book a call with me. right? So again, I treat email as service oriented. And then if I have something in particular come up, like if I don't know, if I have an event I'm going to, or if I'm selling something that I have limited spots, I will send an email and say, hey, I have this opportunity. I'll email you once more about this. I just communicate if it's like different than the normal process. But you get the emails by giving people something they actually need and they can apply that day, because it's a shortcut to convincing them why they need your support. Robert asked, what's the role of my AI assistant? I can never remember what I say in these conversations, including action items. So it's an AI tool that records and takes notes for me, and it sends me a task list. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Lindsay. This was so good. And I know it's so much. So I am going to be sending out the recordings. It'll be
Okay.
up on Facebook as well. And so that way you guys can, sometimes you have to re-listen to this.
Okay.
And then I'll also send out the case study to everyone as well.
Okay.
So that you'll have it to go through and reference back as you're watching again. Because sometimes, marketing can be a new thing and sometimes even scary for people. So, if you have this to be able to look back on and like, okay, now for me, how can I plug this in for me? Then that would be amazing. So we are in talks with Lindsay about bringing her on for some of our authors that it makes sense to do some of the book marketing with. For some of you that are the DIYers or you've already launched, we do have in our store, a Christian author shop. If you go to shop all, it'll list all the products and everything's in alphabetical order. And right at the top is author marketing made easy. One of the things I did there for this is I made a checklist, Lindsay, and I'd love to do this as well. I made a checklist where, when you go to a restaurant and it says, okay, chef vegan or chef special, and it's got the little icons. So I did one like, if you don't have very much time, here's how you go through it. If you've only got this much time, follow this icon. If you want to do everything, then just do everything. So we broke down the list for that, which helps for how much time you have as well.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much, Lindsay. This was such good information. And again, we're going to send you out all of this stuff. If you'd like to work with Square Tree, you can go to squaretreepublishing.com and click on the apply button. Even if you're just getting started, it gets you on our email list so that we can help you and get you the next step that you need. Well,
Absolutely.
thanks, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time. Bye.